Looking back at my time on Wall Street, specifically the years leading up to the 2008 crash, I learned a lesson that isn't written in any economics textbook. It is a lesson that took me nearly going bankrupt to understand. Back then I was 40 years old. I was a vice president. I had the title, the suit, the corner office view, and I was absolutely miserable. I was obsessed with making it. I remember sitting in front of my monitors sometimes for 18 hours a day, staring at the ticker tape until my eyes burned. I was analyzing every micro movement of the S&P 500. I was reading every report, taking every meeting, sleeping 4 hours a night. I thought that if I just applied more pressure, if I just squeezed the market hard enough, it would give me what I wanted. But the harder I tried, the worse my returns got. It was maddening. I was losing money to guys who played golf 3 times a week and barely looked at their screens. I felt like I was running on a treadmill that was slowly increasing in speed, but I wasn't moving an inch. I was desperate. And in finance, desperation is a scent that the market can smell from a mile away. And it punishes you for it. It wasn't until I stepped away, forced away, really by a near breakdown, that I stumbled upon a philosophy that changed my entire financial life. It wasn't from Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger, although they certainly practice it. It was from a philosopher named Alan Watts. He called it the backwards law. The idea is simple, but it is incredibly difficult to accept, especially if you are ambitious. Watts explained it like this. If you fall into water and you don't know how to swim, your instinct is to panic. You thrash around, you try to grab the water, you try to force yourself up. But the more you struggle, the more you sink. The sheer force of your anxiety pulls you under. But if you simply relax, if you let go and fill your lungs with air, the water, the very thing you are fighting, will hold you up. You float. Wealth works exactly the same way. There is a cruel irony in money. Those who need it the most, who chase it with the most intensity, often repel it. And those who treat it with a certain level of detachment, who don't seem to need it to be happy, often find it flowing to them effortlessly. This is the backwards law of wealth. The desire for a positive experience is itself a negative experience. But the acceptance of a negative experience is a positive experience. Let that sink in for a second. When you wake up every morning checking your bank account, terrified that it is not growing fast enough, you are reinforcing a signal to your brain. That signal is I lack. You are training your subconscious to live in a state of scarcity. You are vibrating with the energy of I don't have enough. And here is where it gets dangerous. This isn't just woo philosophy, this is mechanics. When you approach investing from a place of I need to make money fast, you shorten your time horizon. You stop looking at the 5-year or 10-year potential of a business. Instead, you look at the price action of the last 20 minutes. You buy high because you are afraid of missing out, and you sell low because you are terrified of losing what little you have left. You are thrashing in the water. I see this today with young investors. They want to escape their 9 to -5 jobs so badly that they pour their savings into highly speculative assets, crypto coins with no utility options contracts. They don't understand. They are trying to force a result. They are trying to grab the water, and inevitably they sink. But why do we do this? We are rational human beings, right? We know we should buy low and sell high. We know we should hold for the long term. Why is it so hard to actually do it? Well, we need to look at the neuroscience of scarcity. There was a fascinating study done by researchers Mullainathan and Shafir. They found that when people are preoccupied with a lack of money, their cognitive function actually drops. It is equivalent to losing about 13 IQ points or missing an entire night of sleep. Think about that. When you are operating from a poor mindset, when you are anxious about your bills or your net worth, you are literally making yourself dumber. Your brain has limited bandwidth. When that bandwidth is clogged up with survival anxiety, how will I pay rent? Why is my portfolio down? You have no mental processing power left for long-term strategy. You develop what is called tunnel vision. You can only see the immediate threat directly in front of you. You lose the ability to see the periphery. In the context of investing, the periphery is the big picture. It is the compound interest curve. It is the inevitable recovery after a recession. But you can't see that. All you see is the red arrow on your screen today. This tunnel vision leads to what I call the desperation tax. The desperation tax is the premium you pay for being impatient. It is taking a payday loan with 400% interest because you can't wait until Friday. It is selling a great stock during a market correction because you can't handle the pain of seeing a paper loss. It is the cost of your own biology working against you. The most dangerous manifestation of this is FOMO, fear of missing out. Now most people think FOMO is about greed. They think, oh, look at those people chasing the next big tech stock. They are just greedy. I disagree. I have been there. It is not greed. It is fear. It is a deep, primal fear that everyone else is getting ahead while you are staying behind. It is the fear that you are insignificant. In 1999, during the dot-com bubble, I saw rational, intelligent men throw their entire retirement funds into companies that didn't make a dime of profit simply because their neighbor made 50% last week. They weren't greedy, they were terrified. They were terrified that they were the sucker at the table. And what happens? The bubble bursts, the water settles, and those who were thrashing around trying to catch the wave at the last second are the ones who drown. So we have to ask ourselves a very hard question. If trying harder doesn't work, if anxiety makes us statistically less intelligent, and if chasing money causes us to lose it, what is the alternative? Are we supposed to just give up? Are we supposed to do nothing? Number, that is a misunderstanding of the philosophy. The alternative is not passivity. The alternative is detached action. It is the ability to work, to save, to invest, but to do so without the crushing weight of needing the outcome to happen right now. It requires a fundamental shift in how you view yourself. You have to stop viewing your net worth as a scoreboard of your value as a human being. When I was in my 40s recovering from my financial mess, I had to realize that Alex Grant was not the number in my brokerage account. As long as those two things were tied together, I was a slave. If the market went up, I was a genius. If the market went down, I was a failure. That is an exhausting way to live. The moment you detach your ego from your money, something magical happens. You regain your bandwidth, your IQ comes back. You can look at a market crash and not feel panic, but feel opportunity. You become the person standing on the shore, watching the others thrash in the water, and you know exactly when to dive in calmly, smoothly, and effectively. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. So how do we actually do this? How do we trick our brains out of this scarcity tunnel when the bills are real and the pressure is high? We need a protocol. We need a way to override our biology. This brings us to a concept that completely changed how I operate, not just in the markets, but in life. It is the intersection where Eastern philosophy meets Western capitalism. In ancient Taoist philosophy, there is a concept called Wu Wei. It translates roughly to effortless action or non-forcing. Now, in our hustle culture, this sounds like laziness. We are taught that if you want more money, you need to grind harder, you need to trade more work, more stress, more. But look at the greatest investor of our time, Warren Buffett. If you analyze his schedule, it looks almost empty compared to a typical day trader. He reads, he thinks, he waits. He might make one or two big decisions a year. Sometimes he does nothing for years at a time. This is Wu Wei in finance. There is a saying, muddy water becomes clear when let alone. Think about your portfolio during a market correction. The water is muddy. The prices are volatile. The news is screaming panic. Your instinct is to put your hands in the water and try to clear it out, to sell, to buy, to hedge. But by putting your hands in, you only stir the mud up more. You increase your transaction costs, you trigger taxes, and you lock in losses. But if you practice Wu Wei, if you have the discipline to do nothing, the mud settles, the water clears, the market recovers. Doing nothing is often the hardest thing to do. It requires a supreme amount of confidence. It requires what Ralph Waldo Emerson called self-reliance. Emerson taught that the root of all anxiety is a lack of trust in oneself. We rely on the market to make us feel safe. We rely on our job title to make us feel important. So when those things shake, we shatter. But the slow fortune approach is about building an internal fortress. You have to reach a point where you say, I am going to be okay, regardless of what the S&P 500 does today. When you truly believe that, you become dangerous. You become immune to panic selling. You become the predator, not the prey. So how do we operationalize this? Philosophy is great, but we need actionable steps to rewire our brains from scarcity to abundance. Here is the framework I use. First, you must define your enough. This sounds basic, but 90% of the people I meet cannot give me a number. They just want more. The problem with more is that the finish line is always moving. If you don't define what enough looks like, you will always feel poor, no matter how much you have. You need to calculate the exact amount you need to buy your freedom. Once you have that number, the game changes. You are no longer running an endless race, you are running toward a destination. Second, you must trick your brain using the pay yourself first rule. Now you have heard this as standard financial advice, but I want you to see it as a psychological hack. When you get your paycheck and you immediately transfer a percentage, even if it is just 5% into an investment account, before you pay a single bill, you are sending a powerful message to your subconscious. You are telling your brain, I have a surplus. I am important. My future is more important than the electric company or the landlord. If you pay everyone else first and try to save what is left, you are telling your brain, I am the last priority. I get the scraps. That is a poverty mindset. Reverse the flow and you reverse the psychology. Third, apply the 30-year test. Every time you feel the urge to make a financial decision based on emotion, whether it is panic selling a stock or buying a luxury car, you cannot afford to ask yourself, will this matter in 30 years? If the answer is no, you are reacting to noise. That dip in the market today, in 30 years it will be a blip on a chart you won't even be able to see. That flashy car, in 30 years, it will be scrap metal. This simple question forces your brain to snap out of the short-term tunnel vision and re-engage with the long-term horizon. And finally, and this is the most counterintuitive step of all practice generosity. I know you are thinking, Alex, I am trying to save money. Why should I give it away? Because hoarding is a signal of scarcity. When you clutch your money tightly, you are screaming to the universe that you are terrified it will run out. But when you give, even if it is a small amount, even if it is just buying coffee for a friend, you break the grip of fear. You prove to yourself that you have more than enough. You cannot feel poor and generous at the same exact moment. It is physiologically impossible. By giving, you force your brain into a state of abundance. And from a state of abundance, you make clearer, smarter, and more profitable decisions. To wrap this up, I want you to remember, this wealth is not what you see. We are programmed to think wealth is the Ferrari, the mansion, the Rolex. But as the writer Morgan Housel says, wealth is the nice car not purchased, the diamond not bought. Wealth is what you don't see. It is the assets growing quietly in the background. It is the ability to sleep 8 hours a night without waking up in a cold sweat. It is the freedom to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That is the prize. So stop chasing, stop thrashing in the water. Stop trying to force the outcome. Build your skills. Live below your means, invest consistently, and then let go. Let the compounding do the heavy lifting. Remember the backwards law. When you stop trying to grab the water, it will hold you up. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Thanks for watching.